Okay.
So, you want to debate about something? You want to get it? You want a
Yes,
hot take?
please.
I'm gonna
Absolutely.
ruffle your feathers a little bit. Just kidding.
Mm.
Maybe not, but it might. Um, and maybe you have to actually go before you have any strong takes for or against this. You may need to go read the article. But there was this article that I read recently about Airbnb and how Airbnb has made a public announcement of the fact that, I mean, not like, I think it was just there was like an interview. It wasn't like they made some big campaign about it, but they have cut back their, I want to say ad spend, but it was like their, like basically digital ad spend, like their conversion driving ad spend to focus more on branding efforts. And they say it's paid off, meaning not so much pay per click or
Mm-hmm.
um, things like that. They haven't turned it off. Like they're still doing some stuff, but they cut it back a bunch and have been focusing more on like we talked about some of those commercials recently, like the phone that doesn't pick up and it shows the pictures, and they've done things that are more kind of brand essence, for lack of a better term. Like this is just putting the brand feel and energy out there,
Right.
and awareness plays. And they said the numbers of actual users and like the way that their actual money making metrics have been successful, even though they're paying less for it directly, like low funnel stuff. I guess that's the best way
Hmm.
to think. I don't think they use the term low funnel, but basically it's like they used to spend a lot more low funnel, and now they're spending more high funnel. And apparently, it's trickling down the way they want it to, at least in the short term. So,
Do you
I,
know, does, I haven't read this article, but have they, like, did they talk about how they're measuring it, like how they're attributing it to it? Or is it just because they made such a big spin switch that it's directional enough that it's obvious?
so Wall Street Journal, Airbnb says its focus on brand marketing instead of search is working. The home sharing company posted its most profitable quarter to date, saying its pre-pandemic move away from search advertising has been a good bet. The company in 2019 began trying to depend less on search advertising and lean more on brand marketing campaigns and public relations designed to build its brand. The company is focused on public relations practices to drive news coverage of its business, along with advertising campaigns running on channels such as television. In the first quarter of 2021, sales and marketing expenses fell 28% from the quarter a year earlier, but it was still to 229 million. Like I said, they're not spending money, but citing a decrease in performance marketing expenses refers to campaigns that directly generate consumer action and an intention to use the strength of its brand to attract guests. We think of performance marketing as more of a way to laser in to balance supply and demand rather than a way to just purchase a large amount of customers. That's what the CEO said. Airbnb isn't thinking of marketing as a way to buy customers because more than 90% of the traffic to its platform arrives directly, unaided by search advertising. That's probably something that helped inform that
Mm-hmm.
decision. So not everyone has that luxury necessarily, or is in that situation right now. So it's said its strategy now is to use advertising to publicize Airbnb categories, a way to search for homes based on factors that, and at least the different factors you can search by, blah blah blah. Anyways, so that was interesting. I didn't remember that exact detail that they said over 90% has been direct, which means already that they have good brand awareness. Like people are directly looking.
Right.
They're not like, oh, how do I find vacation rental and stumbling upon Airbnb? They're looking for Airbnb. So you
Right.
could make the argument that they're already strong. They don't need to do a bunch of that, but that's been their decision basically, is just to lean heavily into that and say even if we're already at the top, like we're going to be the first thing you think of when it comes to finding somewhere to stay.
Yeah.
So again, not that it's anecdotal; it's one example. So what I'm saying, I'm not bringing this up to say that no one should spend their search. And like I said, they're still spending millions of dollars on it. So it's not like if we cut our spend and we're doing great. I don't think they would do that. But it was interesting
Right.
to show that they actually about 30% cut of their budget and put that money somewhere else. And they said it's been a good payoff for them.
That's cool. I have thoughts. I actually think that, like, it makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like I'm at an agency right now that focuses a lot on SEO and some on paid search and other ads and stuff. And what we typically see is like the ones that need the paid side are usually not necessarily the more, not the desperate ones, but the ones that want to move quickly and need to get that revenue now. Is not necessarily about building for the long term. That's not what paid search is for. SEO works that way, but again, it's search based, so it's not exactly the same as actual brand building. But like it makes sense. Like
Yeah.
going after paid search is very low funnel, very much like just take whatever you can get, and then focusing on building your brand will help, should in theory help the whole thing grow, which it makes a lot of sense actually. So I'm not mad about it. I think
Good.
that
Well,
makes
yeah, and
perfect sense.
to me, this isn't a case study showing, oh, look, search isn't that important. What it's saying is branding is also important. Like if you
Yes.
only are putting your money into, I want to get a click that turns into a sale, success. Let's keep doing that. Then you're only going to be as successful as your budget is, or as how competitive the market is, or this, like you only can control
Yep.
this much of it. And so you need to be doing brand building efforts on as well, so that the cost of your search is more affordable. It's not such a heavy cost per click because like your name pops up, they recognize you, rank for more keywords or whatever. But then also ideally, although you're never going to reduce to where you're never getting search traffic. Ideally, you're shifting to where it's less and less of where people are finding you, to where like your Airbnb and people are directly
Right.
searching for you. That's a good indication you have built that, and that is, when I say free, I mean you had to do the investment to get to that point, but in that moment it's
Right.
free, it's free traffic. And so yeah.
Yeah. Like I think yeah, you're right. Like I've this actually is a good segue into some of the other stuff I wanted to talk about today. Like at this agency, this is the first time I've worked with a lot of e-commerce clients. And so Q4 has been crazy and a lot of fun, but I've definitely seen where we have some of our smaller e-commerce clients that like all they do is paid search and SEO and maybe a little bit of social, and they're doing fine. They're making money. We're helping them be profitable,
Hmm.
but they're not. There's not going to be scale there, and so like part of the whole brand building effort is going to be building your own funnel and growing the demand for your product, which is kind of I guess the whole point. But it does take investment and it does take, dare I say, like faith to believe
It's
that
not
this
as
is going to make
quick.
a difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely not as quick. Definitely not as immediately measurable. Um, yeah,
And
so
it's
it's
something that is also less clear how to do it well. Like there's best practice, and you kind of know what
sure.
you can feel like this is a good effort or not. But like based on data, basically, like this is what I'm ranking for. This is my cost per click. This is how competitive it is. This is my budget, daily spends, all that stuff. You can't control it entirely, but you can pretty well fine tune it and say, okay, ROI. I'm going to spend this much money. It's going to turn into this much revenue. It's not so
Mm-hmm.
cut and dry with branding. And so
Right.
even if you are like, hey, I have the faith, like you said, to invest in it, to know you're doing it right is less clear as like digital marketing, search, and stuff like that. So it is people mess up, I feel like, more doing that. And the problem is sometimes in their side, oh yeah, that didn't work. We're not going to try branding anymore. Or maybe you just didn't have a good commercial, or maybe you put it in the wrong audience, or maybe it's hard to get soured on that
Right.
and not go back. But yeah.
Well, and I think it's all about like testing into it and looking for things that you can measure so that you can feel like you know whether you're getting success or not. Decide what your success metrics are. And I think like the Airbnb example makes a lot of sense that like you should you should be able to see the impact in your brand efforts by how people find you. And like if 90% of your traffic is coming from direct, like that's a good indicator that you've got a solid brand out there. So like maybe right now 10% of your revenue comes from direct. You do some very focused brand building with some interest based audiences out there through CTV and display or
Yeah.
whatever, and then see if that number starts to go up. See if organic search starts to go up a little bit. See if people clicking on your brand terms on your PPC is improving, and use those as indicators, and then you can start to dial.
It's the takeaway there basically is marketing in general is it can't be set it and forget it. You got to be able to
Nope.
monitor and keep adapting, otherwise you get left behind. And which maybe sounds obvious, but a lot of people kind of think that yeah, that's obvious. But then you look at when was the last time you tried something or tested something new, and it might be longer than you think. And so
Yeah.
yeah,